Let me dig roll very quickly.
Maybe I'll just watch your vlog. I mean, who knows? Maybe I'll
Evan was gone.
put them on TV. What's the difference?
Okay, I know Jaden and Liam are here because I gave Ellie that thing. Roman, Xander. No, I see you. Adrian, Jacob, very good. Yuri. Noel. Got it. We're cool. We are cool. Aren't we cool? Yay! Hey, I got new keyboards and new mice. No last week's. All right, here we go. So I'm looking at the test coming up. I will talk probably on Thursday about how I want essays. My short idea, and that's kind of the format we do for all essays, but these are going to be short ones. We can expand to longer ones. I'm really trying to make things kind of simple, like one formula that will be easy for me to teach, easy for you to get. It's something I stole from somebody else, and it works really well. And who got the monopoly of TSAs? The East India Company, yeah. And what was the issue? Was it taxes or monopoly that led to the Tea Party? Yeah, it was the monopoly. What did they dress up as they stormed the Eleanor and the Beaver? Mohawks. And why Mohawks? What do Mohawks represent? Liberty. They would have said liberty. They're close, but they would have said liberty at that time. And what law said no colonial currency, taxes must be paid in specie? Is this better?
1764 Currency Act.
Yeah, the Currency Act. And the Currency Act, what did that immediately cause? What happened to the value of money?
Deflation.
Yeah, deflate. What did the value of money do? Up or down? Value up, prices created a what for the economy?
Depression.
Depression, pre-capitalism, but depression. And went through the Townsend Act. Oh, quartering of troops. Besides the horrific instances of soldiers living in people's homes, what were they taking away from colonists too, especially the working people? Yeah. Jobs. Yeah, the job, rope making, whatever it might be. Told you about the poorhouse. Okay, good. Talked about Snapple. And it's really important to see about these conspiracy theories, how quickly they can spread. I know people feel like they're part of something like bigger. I know something you don't know. Aren't I smart? It really is kind of like a special club that people are very susceptible to, really susceptible to today. And this was one of many conspiracy theories. And when it clearly was not true, even the most cursory look, people would know it's not true. I bet it would go like wildfire today if that happened. There'd probably be people in class telling me about this. What's the one I just saw? Do you know what the Sphinx is? Okay, the nose fell off. And I was told that the nose fell off because the French were jealous of African culture, so they blew the nose off when Napoleon invaded in 1796. No, the nose fell off. That's not what happened. Conspiracy theories just go. And it's enough for like, oh yeah, don't I know something special? So back to this now. Let's get to the intolerance. We have this new movie worksheet, so you can decide on your own, but you do have to just put this down to keep it in order. The 1774 Intolerable Acts. The British actually called them the Coercive Acts. And coerce means to really, to punish. Yeah.
those things stupid boy and those jealous how tall it was.
How tall it was?
Yeah.
Oh. And Napoleon, that's another myth. Napoleon was not unusually short at all. He was an average size. But the British did that to mock him. And now people buy that. There's even a Napoleonic complex, and he wasn't short. So, coercive means to punish. And this is an important thing to understand. So the British point of view, they pass these laws, and the colonies are going to obey. They're not obeying? We'll show them. We'll show them who's boss. And that is such a corrosive attitude. You know, that idea is, I'm going to show I'm tough. It's what happens. Well, what are they going to do? Oh, yeah? And it doesn't end. It's silliness. It's actually like a couple little kids in the playground. Actually, the British were acting like this. So these are laws. We've already mentioned these before. But remember, we went through remember these? Boston Harbor shut down. So we already talked about these with the media. Boston Harbor shut down. Close the assembly. Trial's going to be in Britain and courtroom. So all these we have. So you can choose whatever you want to do, but this comes from the conflict of nights. So you have these somewhere. All of these. Here's a couple cartoons showing, for example, now this basically imprisons and starving to death the city of Boston, and their liberties being deprived. The Sons of Liberty would meet under maple trees, dubbed Liberty trees. The French Revolution, they would copy that now. So like every French town, there's a Liberty tree, and that, I think it's kind of amazing. You know, that comes from the Sons of Liberty in the United States. But here's another one. Here's another example of, here's America. This is Lady Columbia. Lady Columbia was drawn a lot to represent the United States well into the 20th century. I know you've all heard of Uncle Sam. Uncle Sam would kind of take over as the symbol of the U.S. at the turn of the last century. So that's Columbia. They're dumping tea down the throat. But more important than that, this should remind you of the Mohawks, why they dress as Mohawks. The hair and also a little bit of the clothing, this represents an American Indian too. So liberty. So it has a little bit of both of that. You can really see with the hair. And a little bit of the facial expressions, but it's still a picture. And how did the Patriots go? So this happened. The Patriots organized, the Sons of Liberty did, the Tea Party. What was their attitude towards this? How did they feel about the coercive acts and or intolerable acts? All these acts that restricted trade, all these acts that took away their government, their control, their power. Now we're like slaves. How did they feel? Who had been warning that the British were going to do all these things? The Patriots. How did they feel? Yeah?
That's like I said, sort of, I told you what's going to happen.
Say it again.
I told you what's going to happen. You didn't listen. Now look where we are.
I told you. If this thing happens, will this create more patriots or loyalists? They're happy. They're overjoyed. This is exactly what the Patriots want. Now you might think, oh, they'll be mad because this is happening to the people of Boston. They have a little bit of a kind of a sociopath to believe this, but they could say, I told you so. And now let's join the revolution because the British won't back down. Has everyone got that? They wanted this to happen. They wanted the British to crack down so then they could turn around and say, we have no choice but for revolt. And I put down revolution, even though that term really wouldn't have made much sense yet. I told you so. And they're not going to stop. And so that would be spread through groups called the Continental Association. We'll get to them in just one second. All through the colonies. This is coming to New York, Philadelphia, Charleston, to all of you. But then another law was passed at the same time. And this law was not part of the Intolerable Acts, but the Patriots took it as this, called the Quebec Act. So remember, Britain took New France. Here's New France. This was originally all New France. The proclamation of 1763 gave this to the woodland nations, right here. Here's Quebec. The colonists are French-speaking, which the legacy is that way today. That's why Canada's bilingual. You go to Canada, all the signs are in French and English because of this. And Quebec, today, it's French. Everything's in French. They all speak French. If you go to Montreal, it's French. But they're governing this. Now, Britain wasn't going to leave this in the hands of the woodland people. They wanted it. But how do you govern it? The Appalachian Mountains is quite the wall. Quite the wall. They thought it would be easier. This is just purely administrative to govern here from Quebec because of the river and the lakes. So, the Northwest is what they call this. In fact, when I was a little kid, old timers would still call, like Michigan and Wisconsin, the old Northwest. So this area here would be administered to Quebec. It's a British colony. Remember, there are French colonists there, but Britain controlled it. It's British royal governor. It's Britain. So it's going to Quebec. And this was purely done to administer it, but also, they're going to keep it away from the colony, the other 13 colonies. Can you imagine the Patriot reaction? They're stealing our land again. Here they go stealing the land, and who are they giving it to? The French. The Patriot action, they're giving our land to the French. No, they weren't. There were French colonists, but they're now under British rule. But that's what the Patriots said. And that's how geared up people were. They bought this crazy, what we would say now, conspiracy theory, that this was all a plot to give the colonies to the French. Because once they give the Northwest, they're going to give the rest of the French. So the British fought almost 100 years of war against the French. Lost thousands of lives. Untold treasure to fight this war against the French, to finally win, so they could give it all back to the French and these colonies. How could anybody believe that insanity? Okay, most, didn't believe it, but all you need is like one more thing. Look at these intolerable acts. Even if you don't 100% believe it, it's like, oh yeah, they're out to get us. They're out to get us. But this is insanity. But that's how conspiracy theories work. And once you say it enough, it just becomes like accepted. So I kind of half-heartedly joked about the dogs and cats thing in Springfield, Ohio. And that is completely false. It is not true about, in fact, the conspiracy is that illegal immigrants, undocumented immigrants were sent to Springfield, Springfield, Ohio. There's lots of Springfields in the country. Springfield, Ohio, and they're now stealing people's pets. And that's what President Trump said. Completely and totally not true. In fact, they're not illegal at all. They are perfectly legal immigrants from Haiti. There's 20,000 of them that have taken over jobs. That's not happening. Yeah.
Wasn't it like the instance that he was referring to was like a mentally ill woman?
A mentally ill woman in Columbus, Ohio.
She was a legal immigrant.
She's an American citizen.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she's an American. And she was mentally ill and she killed her. She killed her cat. Horrible, but nothing to do with eating it. But that's whatever, it became this big thing. Today, all the schools in Springfield, Ohio are shut down because of bomb threats. Because people are calling bomb threats to stop these illegal immigrants. The hospitals are shut down because of bomb threats. They had to send the state police to Springfield because the whole city government shut down because people are calling bomb threats. And you got to take them seriously because this is America. And so that's what conspiracy theories, how people can believe this. So the whole thing about the Snapple and all these, things haven't changed. People believe stuff. And it's simply not true. But then again, if I was part of the conspiracy, isn't that what I would say? Yeah. Think about it. Moving on. And then what? They're going to take over these areas and force them to become Catholic. It's not just giving them to the French. They're going to say, you can no longer be a Puritan or a Calvinist or an Anglican or a Lutheran. You've got to be Catholic. And they all remember the horrible religious wars of the last century. A quarter of the population of Britain died in the British Civil Wars. Much of it was fought between Puritan and Anglican. A third of the population in Central Europe died in the 30 Years' War, Protestant versus Catholic. And that's coming here. This is so ridiculous, it's hard to put into terms. Should show you the way they're thinking. And also, when people are kind of isolated, or allow themselves to be isolated in their own little bubble, it becomes more believable. So here's a cartoon, a wood engraving of dancing cardinals now taking power from the British, and who's this behind telling the British what to do? Beelzebub. Yeah, the devil. The devil's behind. Patently ridiculous. But 1774, First Continental Congress. The Continental Congress would be, okay, don't think of it as a government. The colonies sent some people, some patriots, some loyalists to Philadelphia. They met at Carpenter's Hall right there. That's Carpenter's Hall. They're building a new colonial capital for Philadelphia off of this direction. They're kind of crammed in to this building. It's the U.S. Army Revolutionary War Museum now. And it's really cool. I went there. I took this picture. It was a really cloudy day in October. My wife and I went to the door to go in, and the lights were all off, but we walked in anyways, and we got to look at the museum. Till the guard came and yelled at us because it was closed on Monday. So I broke it in. I broke in, and I deserved some hard time. 2 years in the state pen in Philadelphia, but I did it for you. I don't know if you guys can handle that. Oh, look at my finger. I dropped a 25-pound plate on my finger. Don't do that. Is everyone, don't you feel my pain now? Are you whining with me? You ever hurt something, then every time you walk by something, you bump it, that thing you hurt on, and it hurts over and over again, and then you cry? And then every time you eat, you bite down. Yeah. I don't know if you guys could have taken this, but I'm taking this. Fingernail's gonna fall off. Stop! Can I whine just a little bit more? Or you're not sorry for me at all, are you? Okay. 12 colonies. Which colony did he show up? Same one as Stampback, yeah? Georgia, yeah. Well, the Massachusetts Assembly met in a little tiny town called Suffolk. Illegally, they met. And they passed a series of resolutions. It's not really laws, they have no power to enforce it, called the Suffolk Resolves. And they basically, the Continental Congress endorsed these resolves. And the two ones were, first out, a boycott. And the boycott and the information about it will be spread by like-minded patriots called the Association. So they would spread information with writers all through the colonies. Sometimes you might see it called the Continental Association. So these are like-minded patriots to spread propaganda. And they also begin to organize the militia. There was a severe shortage of gunpowder, and they said, we got to start stockpiling gunpowder. Now, this is basically only in Massachusetts, but this, they said it in Suffolk, and then the Continental Congress said, we should do this in all the colonies. Didn't really happen in most places. It'd be one of these stockpiles of gunpowder that the British would be after a Concord. Remember that from the video. Also, what were those groups then? Started in Suffolk, and then they put it to those militia that could get there the quickest. They're the youngest. What were they called again? Yeah.
Minutemen.
The Minutemen. That's where the Minutemen would come from, these. So, and then they said, we're not just flighty or acting out of emotion. We have real reasons. And they called it the Declarations of Rights and Grievances, where they said the English were depriving our rights as Englishmen. And they listed out the ways, grievances, that they deprived us of our rights. Parliament was targeted. They're the villain. Actually, the king, they're still loyal. They appealed to the king, basically saying, come save us, King George, from your evil ministers in Parliament. It's like the king must not know, but the king will help us. So even the vast majority there who were patriots still want to maintain or be in the empire. They just want more autonomy. And then they said, we'll meet again in May. I'm sure nothing will happen between October and May. I'm sure nothing big will happen. Nothing big. So they went home, winter hit. There's still confrontations in the streets of Boston. There are a couple times General Gage in Boston sent British soldiers out to look for these stockpiles of weapons. They turned back around. And then nothing major happened. Nothing big. Except for this picture was taken. And I can't emphasize this enough. That is one of the creepier pictures I've ever seen. Who agrees with me? Now, I know what you're saying. What does this have to do with the Revolutionary War? Nothing. But I saw it, and I didn't want to be alone. And now you can never unsee it. And you know the best part is? This couple probably still has this picture very prominent in their house. What does that cat know? Okay, that just made me laugh. I just had to show you.
That's like the old Navy photos, or what do they call them? What's it called now?
Old Navy?
JC Penney.
Oh, they
Like
did that.
those awkward moments where they like land each other.
I know you're talking about, yeah. The only thing that happened after they left was an entire war started. The Revolutionary War. 1775 to 1783, nobody dreamed that it would last for 8 years. Anybody know what country that painting of George Washington crossing the Delaware before the Battle of Trenton, December 1776? Anybody want to guess where that was painted? I'll give you a hint, not the United States.
Australia.
You're close. You're really close.
Russia?
What is now Germany? What's that? Yeah, Austria and Russia are not that close. Well, actually, Austria and Russia at that time, where the Austrian Empire was so big, them and Russia didn't touch each other. Not today. They were using the American Revolution as an example of nationalism for Germany unifying form of Germany. One of the most famous paintings of the American Revolution was painted in Germany for German nationalism. It's weird how the world spins around. So, you don't need to write all this down. Just write down April 19, 1775 lessons. Just to put it in order. We've already saw this in the video, so we don't need the whole thing. So, that's Patriots Day, April 19th. We know about General Gage. We saw all this in the video. So, you don't only need to write down, just to keep it in the order in your notes. So, the first battle happened. Not a major battle. Remember, they went to go get those weapons stored because of the Suffolk Resolves. In Concord, they marched down that one road. They brushed past the drunken militiamen in Lexington, and then went to Concord where they fought the real battle. So, Patriots Day. Go to Boston, it's a big celebration. I just put this down. This is from early 19th century, more modern painting. That's the Minuteman statue at Lexington. I find this kind of funny. This is there at Lexington, and it says, "Stand your ground. Don't fire unless fired upon. But if they mean to have a war, let's have it." Well, they just ran away. But they want to make it more dramatic at Lexington, so I thought that's kind of funny. And then that's North Bridge, that's the Statue of Concord. And that's a lithograph or engraving from 1790s. So we know what happened in the war. That's the retreat back. That's one of those plaques for a British soldier who died. There's still a couple Union Jacks. They're still there today. Who's been to Boston? So a few of you, did you go there? Did you do this? Oh, so you're, yeah. Like you didn't know, did you go do this? Like in Concord, did you do this? Yeah. There's 1,000 things to do, I get it. You just went for a baseball game? With a bad team? That sounds horrible. So, are you a Red Sox fan? They used to be in there. I'm a Royals fan. Moving on. This is what we have to get out, the Siege of Boston. And the Siege of Boston would last for 8 months. The Siege of Boston would last for 8 months. And basically what happened is this. All the militia, kind of appeared, this is the British map, here it is here. There's these hills outside of Boston, and they just kind of entrenched and surrounded Boston. The militia didn't have cannon, they didn't really have organization. They couldn't drive the British out. But the British didn't have enough men, they only had a couple thousand men. They couldn't drive the militia out, so we have stalemate. So the wars began. One more thing, see this map here? I gotta erase this. See that map? All that water, I'm hidden. You have to erase this. Doesn't make any sense. All these hills are about 10 or 50 feet lower. By hand, they came and dug them out with wheelbarrows and horse-drawn wagons in 1810, 1820s, and dumped it all in this. So this is all filled in, this is all filled in here, now it's Boston. So you go to Boston today, this is all filled in. So the harbor is just this. So, the Siege of Boston. This is April, remember? So now we have war. Unplanned, nobody thought for this. April. Who's meeting in May? Just as this is going on in Philadelphia, who's meeting? The Second Continental Congress. They just happened to say May. And when they got back, they're at war. What building is that? That's the new colonial capital, but what do we call it today? What do we call that building today? Everybody write down they met in what we call today, just put down Independence Hall. It's really cool. Independence Hall is a neat building. The first time I was there, they were actually working on it, so they had scaffolding up around it. I was so sad, but the second time, they're working on it. It's really great. And they met there. So now they can meet this colonial capital. Second Continental Congress came in, all 13 colonists came, and when they arrived, they're at war. And no one knows what's going to happen. Anybody who didn't want independence didn't show up. So there's a lot of patriots. A few people from Georgia, a few from New York. New York was kind of reluctant. The colonial legislature sent them, but they have no real governing power, but they're it. And they immediately had to do something about this. So they created, even though they had no real authority or money to pay for it, a Continental Army. Who's Continental Army? That militia around Boston. Not all of them, they'd have to kind of volunteer and they'd sign up for the rest of the war. They had no money to pay them. There's all kinds of problems. This is not a government. And now we need someone to command it. Because each militia has local commanders and it's kind of led by committee. So what did they do? They picked George Washington. Washington showed up in Philadelphia lobbying, trying to get the job. And he was picked, brought up to Boston. He came in his full dress uniform. So he's now one of the wealthiest Americans, colonists. And he had this blue militia uniform. Now, militia, they didn't have uniform. They wore whatever they had. But wealthy people could afford to buy. And it became tradition to have blue militia uniforms, so the American uniform is going to be blue if they had uniform. He just strutted around and acted like a general. Just strutted around. Wouldn't I make a good commander? I'm not exaggerating. That's what he did. He didn't talk. He just acted like a commander. Looked at people. And they picked him. He did have some experience, and they knew how much he hated the British, and so they picked him. And he didn't like to talk. His teeth are really hurting by then. He would soon have them all pulled out and get false teeth. Made out of what? No. That's a myth. Yeah. Yeah, slaves. Either dead slave or they yanked the tooth out. The horrific institution. Now, for really fine occasions, they would carve teeth out of ivory. And you'd wear them to have that nice, bright ivory smile. But you couldn't really eat with them. I'll show you the teeth. I got some. I'll show you. Admit it. You're like, ugh, at the same time, I want to see it, right? I will, yeah. You want to see it. Not right now. John Adams, a leading patriot from around Boston, he pushed for Washington. Why did John Adams, who's going to become one of the most important patriots, push for a man from Virginia to lead the militia around Boston? Why did he want somebody from Virginia? He knew there's no way Massachusetts could win. They have to, that's what we have to get, to unify the colonies. And we need a Southerner then. We need a Southerner. And we got that, he picked George Washington to unify. That's why Adams picked him. You get Washington, and now we have the colonies unified together. Washington might or might not have been a good commander. Adams didn't care. But this ties Virginia to Massachusetts. It was a political move. Within a year, Adams is going to be demanding George Washington be removed from command. Thankfully, that didn't happen. And then the little ironic twist of fate. Under the current Constitution, Washington would be the first president, and his vice president would be John Adams. Just a weird thing that history spirals around. And then, once again, they sent this declaration of resolves. Basically, causes. We are not doing this out of emotional response. This is not a slight or a partial means. We have real, concrete reasons. And we resolve as patriots that we would rather die as freemen than live as slaves. And they emphasize that one more time. Die as freemen than live as slaves. And the reason I'm telling you this about slaves is once again to reinforce the fact that they all knew slavery was horrible. Nobody thought slavery was a good thing. Nobody thought this is natural, therefore we have to have slavery. They all knew slavery was bad. I have to emphasize this because of what's going to happen in the states that will make up the Confederacy. And then they went to a mountain valley and had a retreat. And so they went there basically to discuss the different ways. I don't know how I did that. This is the screensaver that all computers have to have. The idea is if the screensaver goes off, they know your computer's flawed. Something happened to your computer. I shut this off. How do I even do this? Everybody write down this. This became the de facto government of the colonies, of the new United States. The de facto meaning basically temporary or there's no other choice. There's nothing else. The de facto government. All right. Add one more thing I forgot. But before they write down the Olive Branch Petition. I forgot to say that. The Olive Branch Petition. And this is one last appeal to King George. We can go back. We don't have to have revolution. It was Parliament's policies that did this. And we can go back. Just allow us autonomy to govern ourselves and we'll be part of the empire. Do you know what Olive Branch means? Yeah, peace. And that comes from the Torah. So the Hebrew or Jewish holy book, which is the Old Testament of the Christian Bible, and it's also in the Quran. So this is kind of a very well-known statement. And it's about, both, all three have the story of a flood, and when the flood was dying down, a dove was carrying an olive branch showing that we have made it, peace is coming. That probably comes from, the whole flood story comes from Babylon. That's probably where that came from. It's worldwide, there appears to be a flood. But back to this. Washington's riding north. They're waiting for the Olive Branch Petition. It's going to take months to get to London and then get back. So they got a long way. While this is going on, things are happening. The first major real battle of the Revolutionary War is going to take place. The Battle of Bunker Hill. June 17th, 1775. Which of course happened on Breed's Hill, obviously, right? So, these are British forces charging up the hill. I have to draw this for you. I got to draw you the map. I got to show you where it's at so I can draw on it. So I'm going to shut this down so I know what all of you are thinking. Finally, we get to see Mr. Partridge's cartography skills. And I'm going to blow you guys away. 3 of you people have been to Boston, right? You're going to walk out of here all believing you've been to Boston. All of you. You're leaving, Noel. You're going to miss the drawing. You want to see it real quick? Let me draw this. There's a remnants of this. There's a remnants of third period. I got to redraw this. Are you ready? No formal training. I'm going to draw it right here. Right here. Boston. Amazing, huh? Come on, give me something. That's pretty amazing. Here's Boston, Johnson Peninsula. These are the heights. This is water. How do we know it's water? We got waves. Here's a boat. That's a pretty good boat, right? Whale. Fish. Walrus. Walrye. That's a plural walrus, isn't it? Walrye? Yeah, there's walrus all over Boston. You can't shake a stick in Boston while hitting walrus. Walrye. So that's plural, right? Walrye. All right. So let me get back to the drawing. There's no real commander. Washington's still coming north. But one of their commanders, so he's General Israel Putnam. Putnam had the idea. And everybody write down one big battle. Everybody believed that one big battle would win the war. All you need to do is decisively defeat your enemy. Beat them so badly that they'll realize their cause is futile and they'll quit. And Putnam thought they could win one big battle. Show the British they mean business and they'll go back and they're not really sure what will happen. The British are thinking the same thing. We decisively defeat the militia. So they come out from the hills surrounding. If we beat them, they'll run away and go home. Every war, through today, they always believe one big battle. All we need is one big decisive victory. Time after time, they'll believe one big victory. Before the Civil War, both the United States and the Confederacy got one big victory. World War I, World War II, one big victory. You'll see it time after time. When the United States invaded Iraq in 2003, one big victory. How often does the one big victory theory of war work out? No. But next time it will, right? So let me get this real fast. Here's the plan. Putnam. This is the Charlestown Peninsula. Boston's here. That's right, it's a couple thousand troops. Putnam had the idea. If we build a fortification here, the British will have to push us out. And if we inflict enough casualties, they won't put hold Boston. So in the middle of the night on the 16th, they marched down to Bunker Hill. But the problem was the hills on this peninsula are like stair steps. So when they got to Bunker Hill, another hill was right in front. And it wouldn't work. So they actually built the fortification on Breed's Hill. The battle will be fought on Breed's Hill. But to this day, we call it the Battle of Bunker's Hill. If you go to the memorial, it's on Breed's Hill, and it says the Battle of Bunker Hill. And that's life. So they dug a square fort. These are the most quickest way you do it. They come up, and using shovels or whatever they had, they dug a trench about 3 feet deep. So imagine a trench. They took the dirt and piled it in front. So you have up to about here, right here, so it's called a breastwork. And the thought was militia always ran away. Well, who's behind this? They'll stand and fight. That's the plan. Now they're almost out of, they have very little gunpowder. Most of the men have never fired their muskets. Only a few. And these were probably the most experienced. So every shot's got a count. When General Gage saw this, he sent over 1,000 men to battle the militia. And his plan was, knock them out. We can decisively defeat them and humiliate them. It's over. So they sent 1,000 men and marched over. Now, use this pin. They lined up in their 3 lines. Remember that style of fighting? This is European style fighting. The strategy was this. They're going to march to 50 paces, fire once, and then fix bayonets, lock that musket against your hip, and charge. A fast march. So it'll be a line of pikes, bayonets. The thought was the militia will run, we will, combination of, we'll butcher a few and humiliate them. That's their plan. And so they got to 50 paces and fired. But Putnam had all his men duck behind that breastwork. And he told his men, you can't waste a single shot. So you can't fire until they're close. Does anybody know the famous order that Putnam gave his men? So they would not fire until they're close. What is it? Wait till you see their eyes. Now, wait till you see the whites of their eyes. 20 paces. And so they got to about 20 paces on a fast march. All the men stood up and fired at once. Anybody know what you call it when they all fire at once? You know? Close. A volley. It's a volley. Similar things. They all fired at once, and the whole line just fell. Men hit, wounded, killed, bunch of them fell. And the British were so shocked they retreated. But Gage ordered them up again. Same thing happened. They got a little bit closer, one more time. By the 3rd charge, the colonists had held, but the British keep coming, and they were lining up for a 4th charge. They had lost a 1/3 of their men. Putnam then realized, right, ammunition. So before the British could charge, they just pulled back. And the British took the fortified position and lost a 1/3 of their men. They won, and they win 3 more victories like that, and they lose the war. And what did both sides realize? Yeah.
This is going to be a long war.
Yeah, it might last a year or 2. They never dreamed 8. And one more thing, write this down. They didn't quite realize it even though they should have. The word is attrition. Anybody know what attrition means? It's the way wars are fought. So there's always this myth that there's going to be great movements on the battlefield and great tactics and sweeping, flanking movements. No, attrition means this. Last man standing. You kill so many of the enemy that can no longer fight. Wars are bloody, horrible affairs. And eventually one side just can't do it anymore. And that's what every war basically will be. That's what the Civil War is going to be. Revolutionary War. World War I and World War II, completely. Heck, the wars the United States lost in Vietnam or Iraq. Attrition. We just couldn't take it anymore. Too many men, too much treasure. So, you like the picture? So where have you guys been? You've been to Boston. Wish we had a walrus. We'll come back to it. I'll draw you more maps. I like to show off my art. I like to show off. What can I say? So, that's the monument. I thought the postcard was kind of cool, so the monument on Bunker Hill. Look familiar? There was an obelisk craze going into the 19th century, and so they built the memorial for Bunker Hill, and they built this obelisk. And if you're claustrophobic, it's a really fun hike up this. The viewing areas. It's really fun. You'll feel just so good if you're claustrophobic. I am claustrophobic. I didn't like it. It was one of those I grit my teeth and did it. It was awful, but I did it. I'll never do it again. Like this up here, and you look over this. Oh, it's just awful. What monument will copy that? Yeah, the Washington Monument copy. And that's a British engraving of it. So here's Boston, and now we have stalemate. Washington arrived. The British are now stuck in Boston. They can get reinforcements by the sea, but they can't drive the militia out. Washington, he can't push them out of Boston. He doesn't have cannon. A lot of the men got to go back. So, with that, up here, it's Ticonderoga. Okay. Ticonderoga right here is an old French fort. It's an old French fort. And, Ticonderoga. There's what the fort, after the British rebuilt it, Star Fort, it's so beautiful up there, it's kind of mind-boggling. It's a lot like Jordan, Montana. And so, Ticonderoga. Clayton, you get this. Ticonderoga. And Benedict Arnold was a leader of New York militia. And he heard there were cannon up there. And on his own, he ordered the militia in northern New York to surround Ticonderoga. He happened to be there totally independently by Ethan Allen and these Vermont militia called the Green Mountain Boys. They were actually thinking about making Vermont an independent country. They just showed up there. Here we are, Ticonderoga. Now, before we get started, I know what a lot of you are thinking. That is such a cool word. Anybody have a wood pencil, Ticonderoga? Anybody else with Ticonderoga? Isn't that a great name? Ticonderoga? Isn't that a cool name? Now, someday down the road, you might have children, right? And it's always hard to find a name. You agree? It's hard to find a name. What would be a great name for a child? Huh?
Transylvania.
Well, Transylvania, of course, but that's been taken. Ticonderoga is a great name for a child. Give her a little Ticonderoga, and you can shorten it to Ticonderoga.
How would they spell their name in kindergarten?
Huh?
You never passed kindergarten.
No. Elementary kids are nice, so they would never make fun of names. I will give you more names too. Transylvania is not a bad name. Ticonderoga is a great name. Come here, little Ticonderoga. They met them. There's only maybe 20 British soldiers in Ticonderoga. Maybe 20. They were just caretakers, just holding the fort. They had no idea about Lexington and Concord. They had no idea about the Continental Congress. And when Benedict Arnold and Ethan Allen showed up and said, by the power of the Continental Congress, surrender the fort, they didn't know what the Continental Congress was. And these guys were on orders too. 20 men, they can't hold this massive fort, so they surrendered. Here's a picture of them coming to the gate and demanding to surrender. And they came in, and there was gunpowder and cannon. And just then, a rider came about Boston, and Benedict Arnold made the order. He ordered the cannon and gunpowder to be taken from here and brought to Boston. Now, has anyone heard the name Benedict Arnold before? Yes, he's the most famous traitor in American history. In fact, if you call somebody a Benedict Arnold, you're calling them a traitor. Benedict Arnold would be decisive for the victory of the United States in the Revolutionary War. And yet, at the same time, one of the most famous traitor in American history. He ordered one of his officers, another civilian named Henry Knox, to get men to drag the cannon. So we have Henry Knox drag the cannon from Ticonderoga to Boston. And there's no real road. So they had to make sleds to haul the cannon. Cannon, the plural of cannon is cannon. So, I mean, multiple cannons, not one. And it goes, so the Ticonderoga, they went down Lake George, and then overland here. This is now called the Henry Knox Cannon Trail. And it's a big trail. People go there, they take hikes. It's a biking trail. It's a big trail along the way. People go like, you have to go, like if you bike this or run this, there's markers along the way, you get a prize, that kind of thing. And when they arrived in Boston, they changed the entire course of our history. All of a sudden now, George Washington had cannon going into 1776. And what they did is, they put the cannon, and they put them on this hill right there, called the Dorchester Heights. And they dug one of these square forts and put cannon there. And now any Royal Navy vessel going into Boston Harbor has got to pass cannon. Now, I got to be clear about it. Washington's men couldn't hit anything. And they didn't have enough gunpowder to practice. They could just kind of point and hope the cannonballs would land somewhere. But the British realized that Boston was untenable. And so, in March of 1776, they pulled out of Boston. They pulled out of Boston, and everything would be different. Because of Benedict Arnold ordering Knox to drag the cannon, that awesome effort to pull the cannon to Boston, and then they had to pull out. There were no other British troops anywhere in the colonies. Just imagine if you're a patriot and you heard about Bunker Hill, which we inflicted casualties. We took Ticonderoga. And now the British have fled, and there's no British left. What does it look like just happened? We won. At that moment, the king's response to the Olive Branch petition arrived. Does anybody know in Old English law what the punishment for treason is? How about this? Oh no, that's too easy. I'll describe it tomorrow. That'll be a fun thing right before lunch. Yes, it involves disembowel. Yeah.
Was the double vote thing still in practice around them?
They didn't use that, but people still did. That was more of an Inquisition thing.
Did they just like cut off?
Was it drawn and quartered?
Was it like the ox thing where they were wearing legs to oxes and that way?
We got so many. Everyone's getting really close. And what did you say? Which one?
Drawn and quartered.
We're all so close. We'll get to it. Yeah, all lunch, think about it. And then it'll be very vivid tomorrow when I tell you all the details.
It's like the same thing that happened to William Wallace.
Oh, interesting. Even though the movie is nothing at all like that.
No.
There's elements of truth.
Yeah.
William Wallace wasn't even Braveheart.
No.
The Earl of Bruce.
Because I went to the Wallace Monument in Scotland.
Oh, yeah.
Cool. Walking those stairs sucks, but seeing the sword was cool.
You know, I didn't go to that. We ran out of time. But that's really cool you went there.
The sword is significantly longer each time because it kept breaking, and so they kept adding on to it. So it's like 4 feet long. Like, how are you?
That's really cool. When did you go? How old were you?
I was like,
I was old enough to remember.
yeah, but I remember most of it.
That's awesome. Yeah.
Heads up, I will be absent from September 27th to October 1st. So
Why?
I'm going to Edmonton.
Why go to Edmonton?
Oh, my Taylor just decided to go there over. My family just decided to go there a few months ago.
Yeah, so you go there, okay, yeah, let's go family trip, go.
I will get
Remind
you.
me again.
I will get you something from Edmonton.
Sounds good, I appreciate it. All right, sit down, we got work to do.
Oh, I know.
So a couple things real quick, let's start that video.
Okay.
So, my wife came in and told me that Alec brought a friend to meet with her mom.
Yes.
Yeah, so you met my mother-in-law.
That's your mother-in-law?
Yes.
That's so weird to think about.
Isn't that wild? Yeah.
She's very nice though.
She is, she's really cool, yeah.
She loves me a lot. She loves that I love her flowers in her house.
You know what to say. She has she has a green thumb. She's really cool.
Her sunflowers are very pretty.
Oh, aren't they?
They are.
Yeah.
And the one where it's like just really dark too.
I'll go back. I will be back.
Yeah.
No, she's really cool. No, she said that, and I just started laughing.
She got me up. She got me up.
What happened was, she told my, she told my so you met there, all good. That's pretty funny. Small world. See ya.